We can only see Anicca or Dukka, Anatta in a conditioned phenomena. So during the practice of mindfulness meditation, insight meditation, if meditators aspire to realize the three common characteristics of mental and physical phenomena, then first of all, we must see them as a conditioned phenomena. As long as meditators could not see them as conditioned phenomena, they cannot realize Anicca or Dukkha, Anatta completely. So, in fact, in this meditation, when meditators begin to gain some experiences in Vipassana meditation, they shall realize, they shall gain some experiences of not self or Anatta. So meditators have to realize that Nama Rupa, or Nama means mental phenomena, or Rupa refers to physical phenomena, or mentality and materiality. So mentality, materialities occurs as an interdependent state. So they depend on each other in order to arise. So that's why the commentaries explain that Nama and Rupa, or mental and physical or materials, are twins, and each supports the other. When one breaks out, they both break up through interconditionality. We can only realize, for example, anicca, or impermanence, when we realize them, when we can see them as a conditioned phenomena. At the beginning of practice, meditators could not see clearly that this mentality and materiality occurs as an interdependent state. So meditators have to put forth effort to develop mindfulness and concentration. So in this meditation, the factors that should become dominant in our practice is mindfulness. As you know, there are 5 mental faculties. Saddha, or saddha means confidence or faith with right understanding. Viriya, effort or energy. Sati, mindfulness. Samadhi, concentration. And wisdom's panya. So here, mindfulness meditators need to develop mindfulness constantly, continuously, in order to attain deeper and deeper concentrations. So mindfulness is a mental state. The manifestation of mindfulness is as a mental state turning towards the object or the phenomenon. In other words, coming face to face with the object or the phenomenon that has a reason or that has appeared at that present moment. But at the beginning of practice, it's difficult to see that the mindfulness is a mental state turning towards the object. It's because mindfulness is not well developed. So meditators may have to put forth effort to direct the mind to the objects. For example, at the beginning of sitting meditation, some meditators might have to put forth effort to direct their mind. Mind here means the awareness or attention of mind to the basic objects. For example, the movements of abdomen. If the movement is not clearly perceived, then they have to direct the mindfulness or the attention of mind to the other 2 basic objects as soon as possible. The other 2 basic objects are the sitting postures and the touching point that the meditators have chosen. But those meditators who have gained some experiences in the practice and they are endowed with good mindfulness and some degree of concentration, they may realize that they do not have to direct the attention to the basic object, such as the movement of abdomen. If the movements of the abdomen has appeared clearly, then the awareness will be there by itself. In other words, sometimes meditators realize that the awareness of the mind has appeared there almost at the same time with the arising of the movements. But those meditators who have not yet developed their mindfulness well and then have not yet attained certain degree of concentration, then they may have to put forth effort to direct the mind or the attention to the movements of the abdomen. They do not focus their attention on the physical abdomen, but they direct attention to perceive the movement abdomen. So when meditators are mindful of the movements of the rising or falling, sometimes there's another stronger object. For example, painful sensation. If meditators did not control their process of mindfulness, they may realize that their mindfulness will move rapidly or swiftly from the movements of the rising or the falling towards the painful sensations. So meditators begin to realize that the process of mindfulness is a that meditators cannot exercise or call control, because it is the nature of the mind to notice the most distinct object or dominant object. So meditators should quickly follow their mind and note the other stronger object, for the pain, and so on. Sometimes meditators are mindful of the movements rising or falling. Then they know that the mind is thinking of something. If meditators did not exercise some degree of control over their mindfulness, actually the mind will be very swift or very quick and note that thinking mind. Actually, at the moment of knowing that there's a thinking, we can say that the awareness has appeared there. But sometimes some meditators put forth a lot of effort into concentration. So at that time, meditators might know that there's a thinking, yet they feel that their mindfulness still staying with the movement rising or movement falling. So meditators should let go of the mindfulness. In other words, they should not keep the mindfulness with the movements of rising or falling. At the moment of knowing there's a thinking going on. So we can say that that object, the other object, for the pain or thinking mind, has attracted the attention of mind. So that's why the mind or the mindfulness will go there by itself. So meditators begin to realize that mindfulness, the process of mindfulness, which is a mental state, that meditators cannot exercise a full control over it. Another good example. So, for example, when there's a sound has appeared at your ear, do you think that you have to put some effort to bring up your awareness or the consciousness to hear that sound? Actually, you don't have to, isn't it? Yeah. If you practice correctly mindfulness meditation, eventually you realize that the mindfulness or the awareness will appear together almost at the same moment with the arising of an object or phenomenon at that moment. So what we want to emphasize here, that meditators should see what I call cause and effect or the relationship between the object and the mindfulness clearly, then they shall begin to see or realize there are three common characteristics. Sometimes meditators realize the process of movements keep on changing. For example, sometimes the process of movements is long, sometimes could be short, sometimes the movement is very rapid, sometimes movement is slow, or sometimes they perceive that the abdomen, the expansion of abdomen is a big, or sometimes the abdomen is expanded bigger and bigger. Although we may say that meditators see the changes in the process movements, but they have not realized impermanent or anicca. Sometimes we take it as a seeing impermanence because meditators seeing changes in the movements. Actually, what being seen by the meditators is merely changes in the form of the movements, or sometimes the shape of the abdomen. So, although we know that vipassana meditation, the purpose of practicing vipassana meditation is to realize anicca or dukkha anatta of the nama rupa through personal experience or direct experience. But as long as meditators could not see them as a conditioned phenomena, that they are arising due to condition, they cannot really see anicca, for example, anicca clearly. So, in many discourses of Buddha, there are many discourses about conditionality. In fact, there's a saying in the teaching that one who wishes to see the Dharma must see what called dependent origination. Dependent origination in Pali is a paticca samuppada, or in brief, conditionality. So one who sees conditionality or dependent origination, one sees the Dharma. One who sees Dharma, one also sees conditionality or dependent originations. So, as you know, the teachings of a dependent origination or conditionality is very profound, very deep. It is not easy to understand it, but we can gain understanding, better and better understanding from the practice of mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditations. Meditators have to develop the mindfulness. We are practicing mindfulness meditation, so we have to develop these factors of mindfulness constantly, continuously. At first, meditators might have to put forth virya or effort to direct the attention to the objects. For example, during sitting meditation, you have to direct your mindfulness to the basic object, either movements of the abdomen or the sitting postures and the touching points that you have chosen. And then, as you mindful one of the basic object, as soon as you know that there's a stronger object has arisen, for example, coldness or pain, then you have to mindful of the other stronger object. In fact, if you reflect on your experience, your own experience, your practice, actually sometimes the mindfulness or awareness you notice or perceive, for example, the painful sensation very instantly. If there's a pain, you know the pain almost instantly. When you know the pain, in other words, awareness has appeared there. So at the moment of knowing there's a pain, awareness has appeared there, or your consciousness of knowing has appeared there. So meditators have to follow the awareness of the mind and note pain, and so on. And in this meditation, there's a well-known saying about painful sensation. Do you know this saying? In this meditation, there's well-known saying that about the pain. This pain is the key to the door of Nibbana. So it seems like if there's no pain, it's not possible to enter into the door of Nibbana. So if pain is the key to the door of Nibbana, key to the Nibbana, to the door of Nibbana, then should you love your pain or should you hate your pain? Yeah. So if you love your pain, then you won't feel boring in your practice, because you have your lover with you. Pain is your lover. So you should not complain about it. You should be mindful of it. So it's because of your lover, and your lover has shown up. That's why your attention will go there almost instantly, isn't it? So then you have to mindful note pain. But sometimes your lover causes you anger, to become angry, or because you are not patient with it. So you have to mindful, for example, anger, or aversion, and so on. So meditators have to develop mindfulness constantly, continuously. In other words, meditators have to train themselves to develop mindfulness from one moment to next moment. But it's not easy to develop moment-to-moment mindfulness during sitting meditation. But it's possible to develop moment-to-moment mindfulness during walking meditation. And it's easier to develop moment-to-moment mindfulness in the mindfulness of the daily routine activities. So that's why sometimes meditators may have to choose one or two activities. They have to slow down this activity, for example, paying homage gradually, so that they can develop moment-to-moment mindfulness gradually. In other words, meditators are able to mindful and note every moment, every second. But at the beginning of practice, it's quite tough to mindful and note from one moment to next moment. So that's why we always instruct the meditators to increase the mental noting gradually as a way to develop moment-to-moment mindfulness. So when meditators are able to develop moment-to-moment mindfulness better, then concentration also become deeper and deeper. When meditators are able, the meditators shall begin to realize clearly, for example, the movements of lifting during walking meditation, or pushing, dropping, and so on. Then, if the mindfulness is clear, meditators also realize various process of movements. They only perceive there's a process movements. Meditators can see various process of movements in their mindfulness of daily activities, as well as walking meditation. Then they shall be able to realize the movements of rising and falling in their sitting meditation clearer and clearer. So eventually they realize that there's a process movements, then there's a process of awareness. So when meditators can see movements clearly, they also should be able to realize other material elements clearly. The other material elements that should be realized clearly by the meditators are the earth elements and fire elements. For example, when meditators mindful of coldness, they merely perceive that there's only this phenomenon of coldness. There's not, apart from this phenomenon of coldness, there's nothing else, and there's a process of awareness. So meditators begin to realize that there's a pair of processes. Then when meditators can realize there's a pair of processes, they also can realize clearly that the arising of awareness or consciousness. Whenever there's a process of movements, then the awareness or the conscious of knowing will be arising almost at the same moment with the arising of these movements. So meditators begins to realize that the awareness, the arising awareness is depending on an object. If the object has not yet appeared, then the awareness or the consciousness can't arise. So meditators have to realize that sometimes they cannot perceive the movement of abdomens, then they should not keep the mindfulness at the abdomens. If they still keep their mindfulness in the abdomen and waiting for the enough process of movements to appear, then in that way they are not practicing mindfulness correctly. Sometimes they have a tendency to develop concentration. If there is no movements, then meditators just let go of that awareness, and then they direct the attention to the sitting postures, and note sitting, and so on. So, if meditators, for example, can perceive the arising of the movements, clearly, then if that process of rising movements has disappeared, by right, the awareness or the consciousness that cognizing movements also will subject to passing away. So if meditators have been practicing mindfulness correctly, they also come to realize that the mindfulness is also a mental state. In fact, mindfulness is one of the mental factors or cetasika in the teaching of Abhidhamma. It's not an everlasting process. There's no single process of mindfulness that has been mindful and note various mental and physical phenomena. You will have the chance or opportunity to read various discourses. Actually, this is explained clearly in various discourses. For example, in the Khanda Samyutta, the connected discourses with aggregates, where there are various discourses explains what's impermanent about in terms of 5 aggregates, and impermanent with cause. For example, in the discourse, one of the discourses explain that consciousness is impermanent. What's impermanent is suffering. What is suffering is non-self. So what's non-self should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom or task. This not mine, or this I am not, this not myself. And then the other discourses explain of feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, form is impermanent, whereas volitional formations are impermanent. Then in the following discourses, there are discourses explain impermanent with cause. So this consciousness impermanent. The cause and condition for the arising of consciousness is also impermanent. Like for example, when if you are able to perceive the arising of the consciousness with the movements, if the movements, for example, movements of rising has disappeared, then definitely the cause has disappeared. The effect will not last forever. The effect is also subject to passing away. So you have to realize that the arising of consciousness is dependent on the movements. If the movements is impermanent, then how could the consciousness be permanent? At this point, it is very important. So when you practice mindfulness meditation, when you have chance to read the scriptures, then you can know that whether your practice of and experiences are in conformity with the teachings. So it's explained clearly that as consciousness has originated from the form. Form here, just how the example I gave is the movements. Is impermanent. So how could it be permanent? So if the form, the movements is impermanent, then consciousness also subject to passing away. So that's why at that time meditators have truly realized anicca. They are not only realizing that the movements is anicca. The consciousness or the awareness is also anicca or impermanence. So sometimes meditators could not see clearly the process of awareness, which is also subject to arising, passing away, because they could control the process of mindfulness in their practice. For example, sometimes some meditators have the idea that I do not want my mind to think of anything. I do not want my mind to wander away to any place and so on. So they put a lot of effort to keep their mindfulness with the basic object, the movement of abdomens. So sometimes they know there's a thinking, yet they have the idea that my mindfulness still with the movements. But if meditators have developed active mindfulness, or the mind is alert, at the moment of knowing there's a thinking, at the time the mind doesn't know about the movements anymore. It's because our mind can only perceive one phenomenon or one thing at a time. Our mind cannot perceive 2 or 3 phenomena at the same moment. But sometimes we have the idea that the mind can perceive or sense 2 or 3 or 4 phenomena at the same moment. Is because the mind is very swift or very rapid. So it gives us a wrong impression that the mind has perceived 2 or 3 or 4 phenomena almost at the same moment. But in reality, the mind was perceived one phenomenon after another very swiftly or very rapidly. So that's why when the mindfulness is not well developed, then we have to instruct the meditators to practice or mindfulness, or to develop mindfulness based on a guideline. There's to mindful of the strongest body object. So sometimes meditators are mindful of movements of rising or falling. At the same time, the mind still conscious of a less distinct object. For example, some coldness, little bit of numb, or they also hear some noise or sound and so on. But as long as the movements of rising or falling is the most distinct object, then they have to put forth effort to keep their awareness or mindfulness with the movements of rising, falling. But sometimes they sense that there's a strong pain or has appear somewhere. Then they should mindful note the pain, the stronger pain as soon as possible. If the pain is more distinct than the movements of rising or falling. So that's why the Abhidhamma explained that mindfulness is manifested as a mental state turning towards the object, coming face to face with the object. The mindfulness is also manifested as a mental state, protecting the mind from the attack of kilesa or mental defilements. So when you, for example, when there's a noise or sound that restricts your practice of mindfulness. If you do not mindful, not hearing, then defilements such as anger, aversion will arise sooner or later. This is because you did not mindful of the hearing. Simply, sometimes the mind is restless. You know that the mind is thinking, keep on thinking of something. Then, if you do not mindful of the thinking, then thinking can cause another mental state for the defilements to arise. So that's why meditators have to mindful and note the phenomena as soon as possible. In fact, we can only realize various phenomena as a conditioned phenomena when we can mindful and note them at the present moment. We can only realize various phenomena as a conditioned phenomena when we can mindful and note them at the moment of arising. We cannot realize them as a conditioned phenomena if the phenomena had passed away more than a moment ago. We cannot also realize any phenomena as a conditioned phenomena if the phenomena have not yet arisen or have not yet appeared. So we want to realize them as a conditioned phenomena, their relationship within mind and body. So during sitting meditation, most of the time, the physical phenomena such as movements, heat, coldness, or the sensations such as pain, or thinking, or other mental state, condition the rising of awareness or consciousness. So, meditators can develop mindfulness correctly. They realize that they do not have to put effort to put effort in order to bring up, to arouse the rising of consciousness or awareness, because if there's an object that has appeared at that present moment, that object is a cause that causes the consciousness to arise or the awareness to arise. So meditators, you come to realize one is the cause, the other is effect. If the cause had passed away, the effect will not persisting, will not last long. The effect also will pass away instantly. Sometimes meditators may perceive both of them arising and passing away almost at the same moment. So meditators can see them clearly. Then they also come to realize if the cause of suffering has ceased, then definitely suffering also will cease. One will attain what called nibbana or enlightenment. Actually, this method meditation is practiced based on the teaching of Four Noble Truths. As you know, the first truth is a Dukka Satya, the truth of suffering. The second is a Samudaya Satya, the truth of the cause of suffering. And the third, Nirodha Satya, the truth of the cessation of suffering. And the fourth is the Magga Satya, the truth of the way or the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So, if you can see that the cause subject to passing away, then you realize that if the cause, in that way, the cause of suffering is not permanent. When the cause of suffering is abandoned, then one will attain cessation of suffering. So, similarly, if the cause of suffering has ceased or abandoned, then do you think the effect will be persisting? The effect will not persisting. As you know, the truth of suffering, such as birth is suffering, old age is suffering, death is suffering. If the cause is abandoned, then completely, then there's no more birth, then one will attain cessation of suffering. So, in other words, in order to realize Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta, first of all, meditators have to realize the specific characteristics of the material elements clearly, and the process of awareness or the consciousness knowing clearly. In other words, at each moment, there's only a pair of processes. And the nama, or here the mind or the consciousness, has the characteristics of knowing or cognizing, but the body doesn't know anything. The body, for example, if there's a painful sensation, has a reason in the body doesn't know the pain. That pain, body painful sensation, is being perceived or felt by the mind. So the mind or the consciousness has the characteristics of going towards the object. So similarly, in the sitting meditation, if your mindfulness is alert, you realize that your awareness will go from one object to next object. But this is only the beginning of the experiences. But you keep on practicing, you realize that the object has disappeared, the consciousness or the awareness that has cognized the object also disappear. Then there's a arising of another object. Then there will be arising of another process of awareness or consciousness of knowing or cognizing. But as some meditators cannot see clearly that the consciousness or awareness have been arising and passing away with the object, then they might have the idea that there's only one process of awareness that has been mindful and note various mental and physical phenomena. Sometimes meditators are able to mindful and note the process of rising, falling movements constantly, continuously, for a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and so on. But as long as they cannot see cause and effect, then they cannot really develop clear insight knowledge. Sometimes meditators have a strong mindfulness. That single process of strong mindfulness is following various process of rising movements. For example, rising. Then the same process of mindfulness, falling or mindful of various process of falling movements, falling, and so on. Then they only realize the nature of impermanence of the movements, but they cannot realize the nature of the true nature of the mindfulness. So actually merely to see contrariety in the practice sometimes is not so easy. But if meditators can really see contrariety clearly, they will make progress. Sometimes can be quite a rapid progress. Because if meditators see them as a conditioned phenomena, actually every conditioned phenomenon is arising and passing away very swiftly. So similarly, in walking, so in the sitting meditation, meditators could realize the physical phenomena or the body sensation, condition the arising of the process of mindfulness or the conscious knowing. And then, if the mindfulness and concentration are well sustained, then they come to realize that during walking meditation and daily activities, is the mind that condition the rupa. Rupa here means the movements or action. So at the time, meditators can perceive the arising of the intention as a natural process. Meditators need not have to search for it or look for it. This mental state of intention will arise by itself. Then a process movements will take place instantly. For example, during walking meditation, if meditators develop sharp mindfulness and deep concentration, then they can perceive the arising of intention as a natural process. That means there's no one or self intent to lift the foot, but it's merely a natural mental process of intention. Then movements will occur instantly. If meditators could slow down more and more in their daily activities, they would perceive that various process of movements are preceded by intention. That means meditators perceive this intention, then there's a process of movements. There's no self or an I behind this mental state of intention. The movements, meditators perceive merely a movement. So here, meditators come to realize that it is the mind that condition the movements, condition the arising of movements. So meditators come to realize that Namarupa always occur as an interdependent state. They condition each other in terms of arising and passing away. If there's no condition, then they can't arise. So that's why in the practice of mindfulness meditation, meditators realize the specific characteristics of the mental physical phenomena clearly, and then they realize their relationship clearly. Then they only begins to see there are three common characteristics. If meditators could not see them as a conditioned phenomena, their occurrence as an interdependent states, then meditators cannot see clearly. There are three common characteristics: Anicca, Dukka, Anatta. So, for example, during sitting meditation, the arising of awareness or consciousness is being conditioned, for example, by a physical phenomenon such as the movement rising or heat and so on. So the movement is a cause of the arising of the consciousness or the awareness is the effect. But the effect also can become a cause, condition the arising of another phenomenon. So, if meditators have developed sharp mindfulness, then meditators may come to realize, for example, the awareness that cognize the movements. That awareness can condition another process of awareness or consciousness, knowing this process of consciousness or awareness. In other words, we have explained that the mind can perceive one thing at each moment, but the mind cannot perceive itself. The mind or awareness cannot perceive itself. The awareness on the mind can only be perceived or known by another mind. But there are no two minds or two consciousness. There are no two minds or two consciousness. So at each moment, there's only one consciousness or one mind. This consciousness, for example, is given a name in accordance with the condition. For example, if this sound has appeared at the ear, the consciousness that cognizes the sound is known as hearing consciousness or ear consciousness. So consciousness doesn't know himself or herself. So sometimes meditators begin to make progress, then they say that I can see the arising of my consciousness when there's an object. Sometimes when the mind is thinking, then sometimes meditators realize that there's consciousness arising by itself. With the arising of that consciousness, the thinking will disappear instantly. It's because two different mental processes cannot occur at the same moment. Only the previous one had disappeared, then the current one can appear. Then meditators, so sometimes meditators say that I can see my awareness or consciousness that has appeared or has arisen almost at the same moment with the arising of an object. But actually, there's no one or self observing these two processes. If meditators are able to put forth more effort into the practice, then they realize that awareness that has cognized the movements that awareness or consciousness is being perceived by the following process of awareness or consciousness. Then in that way, meditators shall make more progress. They shall be able to realize what I call Anatta clearer. There's no self or person or yogi observing the movements or observing or watching the mind. That's why we say mind knows the mind. If you can see that mind knows the mind, then you make more progress. So there's a discourse explain that the Buddha said, if someone might say, apart from form, apart from feeling, apart from perception, apart from volition, from formation, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away, and rebirth, its growth, increase, and expansion. That's impossible. In other words, consciousness always arises dependent on these four aggregates: form, or sometimes feeling, or sometimes perception, or sometimes volitional formations. You cannot say that consciousness can arise beside these four aggregates. So do you agree? Can the consciousness arise beside these four aggregates? So you, as a person, in the ultimate realities, merely consists of these five aggregates. But at the beginning of practice, when you could make some progress, you always come to realize consciousness can arise depending on these four aggregates. For example, movements is one of the material aggregates. If there's movements, then consciousness will arise. If there's a feeling, for example, pain, then consciousness will arise, perceive the pain. If there's a perception, then consciousness will arise with this perception. Formation consists of various mental factors. So in these aggregates of formation consists of 50 mental factors, or 50. So for example, if there's an unwholesome mental factors, for example, hatreds, then consciousness will arise, knowing these hatreds, these mental state of hatreds. So if there are, for example, if the movements had disappeared, then definitely the consciousness that has cognized the movements also will disappear. So this is one of the paragraphs in one of the discourses to explain that when meditators could practice correctly the way of mindfulness meditation or vipassana meditation, then they come to realize that the consciousness, the arising of consciousness and passing of consciousness dependent on these aggregates. Realizing what we call conditionality is very important in the practice of mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation. It is because this realization of conditionality is the foundation of progress. If you do not have this foundation, then you cannot make more and more progress in your practice. Sometimes meditators can only see the arising and passing away of the object, but not the arising and passing away of the consciousness or the awareness. So meditators should direct to their practice of mindfulness or the development of mindfulness in order to realize conditionality. You can see conditionality, definitely you can see impermanent, because it's clearly explained in the scriptures that every conditioned phenomenon will not even last more than a moment. So this meaning merely explains or call the foundations of the practice in order to realize Anicca, Dukka, Anatta clearly. So this is important that meditators should not try to exercise too strong control over the process of mindfulness. Or sometimes they hold their mindfulness strongly, as if do not want their mind to go anywhere. Then they cannot see what I call the relationship between the mind or the awareness with the object. This point is important because it's the foundation for progress. You do not have a good foundation, then you cannot make more and more progresses. So the teaching of conditionality or dependent origination is very profound, and it's not easy to understand by merely thinking or reading, but you can experience it well. You practice mindfulness correctly in your practice. So if you wish to see the Dharma, then you should make an effort to see dependent origination or conditionality in your practice. And when you see the conditionality, definitely you see the Dharma and able to make progress in your mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation, and able to attain path knowledge, functional knowledge in the Nibbana eventually.